Hello everyone, this is Sangbo. Today I'm going to show how Maka can interact with Google Healthcare API to store and retrieve HL7 file. This is part of the introduction of new feature, so you can take a look Azure or AWS case if you like. So please take a look and let's get started. Before we move on, let's take a quick look what we did before. Previously, a user can access to the management workstation, and then he or she can provide custom HSM message. And that click by clicking process button will send an HSM message to the ORM sender, and the ORM sender service will send an HSM message to the client's app. But however, we couldn't send previously sent HSM message because the macadamia and maca suite saves the HSM messages header data only, and then that header message won't be necessary from client's app because they cannot parse just message header only because they need the other segments such as uh, PB1 or something. So we couldn't send previously sent HSM message using current Maca suite. So we are going to introduce how Maca can send using new feature. So please remember this one and then how this one will change. So as I introduced, the ORM sender will receive the HSM message from the other services or from the UI. And then once it receives the message, it will send the message to the client's app. And at the same time, it will send an HTML message to the other service, in this case, Google or an uploader service that we will create soon. And then Google or an uploader service will upload the HTML message to the Google Healthcare API. Then a user can access to the management workstation, and then he or she can uh, open up the special UI, which is the plugin UI, and then the plugin UI will check the HL7 cloud search type service. And in this case, we will create the Google ORM search plugin service. And then this UI will tied to this service. And then once a user click the execute button to retrieve by using provided condition or filter, the Google ORM search plugin will fetch the record from the Google Healthcare API. And then if there is a finding HSM message, that will be populated to the main UI in the request tab. And then a user can send existing message directly to the client's app, or the message can be modified and then sent back to the client's app. So based on this one, the specific pop-up UI will check Google ORM search plugin all the time. So I will show you what this means, but this special plugin UI will be a part of the new feature. So please take note this one, and then how message is sending through the Maca. Before we implement the Google interface, please check out the macadamia and macaron from the MS Store. This is new feature, and then you can play with the downloaded one. Once you download, you may check the previously what we did. One is the Maca Suite part. You need part of the sample project and some kind of special storage such as references. And you may need another application, which is Mirth Connect to interact with Maca Suite. So please take a look. And then if you're interested in, you can check it first and then uh, use this new feature. So today, we are not going to any kind of local environment to test the Google Healthcare API. Previously, we used the Docker image, but for Google Healthcare, we are not using that one because it is not directly accessible. And the Google Healthcare API is a little bit different. So I decided to directly access Google Healthcare API. So first, we needed to define the Google Healthcare API's environment. The first step is go to Google Console. There is a link I provide here. You can go here, and then you can access the Google Console. But before that, you may need an account, Google account to access that. So please create an account if you don't have. Once you go to the Google Cloud Console, the first step is to create the project. I already created the project name as Maka Test Project 1. And if you go here, this is the Google Cloud Console. At the top level, there is what you create. As I mentioned, Maka Test Project 1 that I created. The next thing is Maka will use this Google Healthcare API, and it requires the API. So don't get confused. The Google Healthcare API is just an API like a DLL. This is DLL plus storage. So Cloud Healthcare API is also an API. So we need to enable to use this one from the Google console. So if you go here, you can on the left side, there is an API and services, and then there is a library. You can click here, and it will show up entire list of the library, and you can search here, or you can go scroll down a little bit, and there is a healthcare and life sciences option. There are two results. In the left side is Cloud Healthcare API. I already enabled that one, so you can click this one, which is enabled from your side, and then you can go to the healthcare API storage specific site. So if you go here, you will see that storage specific UI. But before that, you needed to kind of pin in this healthcare menu. So I already pin in because it will show this one in the pinned products. So you can easily access to this location without searching or typing the address that I just typed in. So please pin in the healthcare and it will show in here and it will be very handy. And the next thing is once you create the project, you need to create the data set, which is the storage place that you are going to use. The first one is the click the create data set, and you can provide all the information here. For now, I'm not going to create because I already created. So if you go here, so data set properties, and then you can choose the name or type name, and then choose the region out of the given location. And then you can choose the Google Managed one as is, and then hit the create button. And it will create this data set like this one. And then you can create the data store inside the data set, which is the main part that we are going to handle. So you can, when you reach here, you can click the create data store. And this time you have to choose which one do you store because they provide three types of the data type. We're going to use the HL7v2 and you can choose the HL7v2 and type the name as what you prefer. I chose HL7v2 and named as HL7v2-ORM. So you can freely name it and then you can choose HL7v2 because we are mainly work with HL7v2. And then you can just save as is. So then we will see that new data store, which is HL7 type, is created. And if you click this one, it provides helpful information that we will use later, along with the some kind of granted permission. So once you create the data store, the next step is to create the service account. What the service account is, it contains all the user information, especially the login and the permission. So I divided the two service accounts, one for upload and one for retrieve and download. But the actual service will use the only one for upload, which is the higher level one. I will show you what that means. But please think about you may divide two service account for each situation. So once you create the data store, you need to create the service account to access to the data store. So if you go here and then IAM admin, and there is a service account and already created, but you can create the create service account button by providing all the message information that they require. So if you look at here, I already created, so you can type whatever you prefer, and it automatically type right below here. And then you can assign the permission that I will show you a little later. Because I already created the permission, I don't want to create, so just exit there, and then if you missed that permission assignment, you can go to the permission. By the way, this is the retrieve. I can go to the home node, which is the create the data. If you go to the permissions tab, you can click the manages access, and it will show another pop-up on your right side, and you can find whatever you prefer. For HL7 there are a couple of options that you can choose. But for this upload one, I chose the healthcare HL7 message editor. Once you reach here for the first time, you may not see any kind of similar one because currently used it will be empty. So you can type the HL7 and then it will show related one. So I chose the healthcare HL7 message editor, which reads, writes, and delete access to HL7 messages. I assign this one to the ORM upload service account. And the next thing is I mentioned that I divided two situations. The one is upload and the other one is download and retrieve and download. So you can repeat the same process for the retrieving service account as well. So same thing with the assigning the name and then assign the permission. In this case, retrieve is the one. In this case, I assign the HL7 message consumer. If you see here, this permission lists in reads HL7 messages, updates message labels, and publishes new messages. So it's a little bit confusing what the consumer and what the editor means. I will show a little later, but you can assign the consumer for retrieve service account. But again, I'm going to use only one for this tutorial. But for this is for the tutorial purpose, I just created another one in case you may choose one of them. So if you go to the IAM again, the roles, or just simply there's a role because we are under the IAM, and you will see a lot of the roles that you can choose for your service account. So you can check by filtering this one, and it will show the healthcare HSMV2 related messages. So here, if you see here, there is a message editor that I rented it to or assigned to uploader, and there's a consumer, the permission that I assigned to the retrieve. So let's take a look at this editor, and this has the 16 assigned permission. And if you go back to the roles, and unfortunately there's no kind of caching, so we have to retrieve again. And then if you go to the consumer, it has 13 assigned permission, which is 3 fewer permissions. For your reference, I captured that information. So if you check the message consumer, this is the, okay, consumer is a little bit different. See, this is incorporated. Cyber phone. So actually, consumer has less privilege than the editor because the editor has a little more powerful option, such as delete. If you, oh, this is the editor. Oh, this is the, so actually I have to define more clearly, but so editor actually has few more privilege, like delete, ingest, and cancel compared to the consumer, which has less privilege. So the main thing is the delete part for the editor. But if you want to use the delete one only, you can assign all of the services with this one. But if you do not allow to delete any HSM message on the HSM V2 data store, you can assign the consumer. So based on the privileges, you can assign one of them. But for this tutorial, we will use the editor, which has the delete one, but we are not going to use this this method because we are going to use create and list for this tutorial. So we're going to use this one. And anyway, but please check later what HSM message consumer has and what HSM message editor has. And in that case, you can choose proper permission to the service accounts. But for now, we have 2 service accounts, one for message consumer and one for message editor. So message consumer editor will be the ORM upload, which has the delete option. And then the next thing is once we create the service account, you can go back to the service account, we need a way to use this service account because the service account is actually containing all the access and information, but it's stored on the Google console. So we have to download the service account. For example, for upload service account, I already showed you what permissions is, and there is a keys tab. And if you look at here, I already downloaded one, but if you reach here for the first time, you will have no key downloaded. So the, the step you have to do is click the create new key in just JSON format, and it will create and download once you click the create button. So once you download the JSON file, you can store that one in the certain location to be referenced in your service, I created the Baka in cloud in Google location, similar to the other tutorial, and I downloaded here. And if you open up this file, for example, I open up with this notepad, it will show you the entire information inside the JSON file, including the key and including the client ID, more importantly, the client email, which contains this information. Of course, the others are also all important as well. But this one contains all the information that required to access this HL7 data store. So please make sure to not store in the open location. Once you download these the JSON file, you are ready to create project. So before we move on, let's think about how can we maintain this service. Service means we are going to use this service account to store or upload the HSM file to Google Healthcare API, specifically HSM data store. So instead of put all the services right under the main project or initial project, which is HSM order project right here, we may create the specific project named Google Healthcare Project, or you may assign the other name. So if you go here, I deleted all unrelated project and services. Only project I have is HL7 order project that contains ORM sender testers and ORM sender. So you can check the ORM sender tester from the sample project. I mentioned in the other slide that you can go here and then there's ORM sender tester. So please import that service as well in this HSM order project if you don't have. So as I mentioned, you may need to create the special project to work directly with Google Healthcare API. So you can just name this similar as the something like this Google Healthcare project. That means this project is for Google Healthcare API. And once we create that one, we can create another folder because we may pointing at this specific location such as HL7 data store or maybe something else. So we can type this is the ORM data store that we created before because we specified the HL7 type data store and we named the service account as ORM uploader and something. So as this mentioned, Google ORM data store, you can just put the group name is that. Then from there, we can create our special service that upload Google HL7 message to the Google Healthcare API. So the first thing, we define the name as a Google ORM uploader. And click here, Google ORM uploader. And in this case, this will receive the HL7 message and then send to the Google Healthcare API. So as I mentioned, ORM sender will send HSM message to the Google ORM uploader. So it will require to receive the HSM message, and that will be a part of request listener. So we define this Google ORM uploader as a request listener. And once you create this service, you will see that there is a section which is config, and then you can define what this service require. You may just set ORM as this ORM Google ORM uploader service require. So whatever the service is, the other service is, in order to call this service, they have to specify and assign the HL7 message to here. I will show you this one later. And then once you assign, define what this service requires, then that will be available using underscore variable name, such as like this. So this will be parameter passed by the other service. And what we need to do for accessing or using the API is you need to add specific library for this service. For example, this is Google's one. So the first one, I may search this one from the NuGet tab, then choose the latest version. But this may take time, so you can search and download. And then next thing is add all the downloaded DLLs in the project. So I already did to save some time. So please download and add all these required DLL to your project like this one. And once you add this one, you may need the, the reference. And the reference requires to set in the using tab as a namespace. We have certain library, and that library needs to be in the usings. So just copy and paste here. I'll show you a little later what actually they do. And as I did it earlier, you have to set required arguments in the settings and config. So once you set all the configuration, now let's build the service for Google Water Uploader. You can just copy this one first and then continue. And you can check each service documentation by accessing this given address and then check about what all the properties and method do. So the first thing is we require the instance of Cloud Healthcare Service, which is the main point to use the Google Healthcare API. So you can instantiate as this constructor requires. So you can just name it as a Google same one, and then it means the Cloud Healthcare Service object or class requires this client service initializer to create the initializer. So it has the properties that have to define. So once you see here, the HTTP client initializer property is actually credential that you have to define. So you need to define this one with the credential, which is actually Google credential. So Google credential, maybe this one, the Google credential. This class has the static method, which is the from file and create scope. You can check as well what this actual Google credential does in the documentation site. And if you go back here, and also what actually the scope that I just write down here is for. Google requires to specify what actual domain you need to access. So for example, the API mostly use this scope for editing, configure the Google Cloud data, even if it says Google Cloud data, but it's part of the Google data, which is the Google Healthcare API, specifically HSMB2 data store. So you need to define this scope in the create scope properties of Google credential. And then it will create the instance from the Google credential file and create scope method. So first, Google credential from file setting method requires the string, which is the actual file that we downloaded before. In this case, this is the file that I just downloaded. And then we may need the location like this because we have to point out which location that the file exists. So it does the something like this, and it will create the credential out of this download file. So we can assign the created credential to HTTP client initializer, and then just we assign the foreign name for the application name, which is the we can define anyone. So we can now ready to create the cloud healthcare service object. And then the cloud healthcare service object has the long line of the method calling way. So this create method is also you may check in the station. We have the create. So we can go here and we can create message request in the store name. So the first argument is create message request, which is I specified here. And if you go here, then check this one as well, and you show helpful information what message request. So request D, and can go back here. This create message request requires message property. This required property, and we can define as so what this message is part of the Google Healthcare API. So if you remember previous one or if you haven't watched previous video, Maka internally use afferent.h7v2 message. It is creating the message object like this. And of course, we have to provide the order message as an initializer. So the message from the afferent HSMV2 library in the Google Healthcare API library is conflicted. So you have to define what message is which one. So this one is the message. You have to create the message. Message. And the message here, I specified here, requires certain kind of properties that we have to provide initially. So this message requires certain kind of the value. For example, this is the data that must be base 64 data. And what we can do here is based on the HL7 B2 library here, we can parse received ORM message. As I mentioned earlier, we can access the received ORM message using underscore ORM, and we can use this to just clearly identify what is it for. So to identify this is apparent HL7 and we can use this library to parse. Parse means get the field value. And this parse message method will populate the old segment and field and component value out based on the received ORM message. And we are ready to populate certain data. And when, of course, we have to populate the data part, which is basics for using this method. Yeah. And we can use this received ORM message to populate the data part by converting basics for field. And what we need to do next is the labels. The labels is the part of their Google APIs property, and then it is the dictionary that we can populate based on the message. So what we can do is, this is actually the dictionary. So we can define what we receive from the underscore ORM. And we can just manually populate this one with a key value. Probably we can just name as a PID. And the value is what we have to get from the parsed message. So in previous session, I used to get PID2 to get agent ID and MSH7 to get message date on the message header. But in this case, the approach is a little bit different based on the Google's data store way. I will show you what that means later. So I can use the parsed message and using using this one, it will get the PID2 value, and then it will be part of the dictionary of the labels. So the labels is part of the Google API's message storage, and this will be used to filter the later section I will show you. And we are going to use this label to retrieve the message from the Google Healthcare API. So for now, we are going to use this Google side message to populate, create message request. So we can, and the thing that I have to point out is we have conflicting message object for Afferent and Google site. So I put the variable for this API as a v1 data to make sure this is for Google's part. So this the correct message request is also part of the V1 data. And I may choose this one as the, like this one. How would I change? So we are now ready to use both the same name class by using this V1 data variable. So we just created the create message request along with the message containing the basics for data and extra field the labels with what we are going to use later for the retrieve the PID and actual PID to value from the receive order message. And we can populate this one in the create methods, the first argument. And the store name, which is important at this point, is what we created on the Google console was can go to the help here, which is the main storage place. You can go to the HL7 V2 store details page, and you can see that there is a path section. See that here? You can copy that one. And this is the data store name. So the create method, which is really long, because the first one as a create message request, and the second one is the store name, where you're going to store that HL7 V2 file. So we just define the method, create method with the request that contain the actual data and the location where this file to be stored. And then this create method returns the something like request. It's not actually creating yet because it returns the request object, and then that request object has the method, which is the same as what I mentioned in here. And this will return the actual message, which is the Google's message, not the current message, which is for parsing the HTML message. So if you're here, this is confusing. So you can just using the say just receive message. Sorry. And this is the asynchronous method. So you may have put the await. And we just defined all the library and the classes to upload the HSM file. So let's check whether this is working right. So, okay, we have something to find. Check this one. Then we create it up. Okay. Message. Check the one by one. Which one is it's not right? Thing. Mm-hmm. Oh, this is the library issue. This is none of the one. So you have to difficult because the Maka intentionally omit the basic system text to make this application for tutorial post. So then it can be what? Just so we ready to deploy this code to upload the HL7 message, which is to be received from the other service. But before we deploy that, let's think about the service, which is the cloud healthcare service that I just created. If you remember, this request listener or specifically this execution steps is executed once some other user or the other service requests to execute, which means whenever it executes, this cloud healthcare service will be created, which means, in other words, whenever it created, the same redundant instance of cloud healthcare service will be created, which is not a good way. So we have to make sure the cloud healthcare service is only one across the services or only one in the application based on the constructor's arguments, because constructor argument may be different. But the main thing is we have to make sure this cloud healthcare service is need to be created one time and only be one instance across these services. So in order to do that, sure, the data is unloaded. The one thing you have to do is to make sure only one instance of this cloud healthcare service instance. So to support that, Waka provide two methods. One is create singleton and one is get singleton. So what create singleton does is it requires the type parameter. In this case is cloud healthcare service type. And then it has the two kind of arguments. One argument is the key to access in the get singleton. And the second argument is the parameters that all the arguments based on the def, defined classes construct arguments. So in this case, we know that the only one argument is required for cloud healthcare service. So this create singleton using the generic type cloud healthcare service parameter in the arguments will ensure only one instance of cloud healthcare service will be maintained across the services. So But still, this is not a way to create this one, even if that makes sure the only one, because this will execute whenever the request was has arrived. So we have to make sure that this might be called only once around this life cycle of the Google ORM upload. So it might be better to put this one in the deploy area. What deploy area is, it will be executed when this service is deployed on the management uh, workstation. So this code will be executed only once when this service starts. So this is the right place to put here. And you can put all the information in here, and it will make sure that this one will be executed only once. And this create singleton will check if previously this cloud healthcare service is instantiated or not. If not, it will create the instance of the cloud healthcare service. But we still have some issue with this credential, which is the JSON file that we created. So please make sure that this is for testing and tutorial purpose. You have to think about how you can maintain this sensitive information. We may use this environmental variable, like what Microsoft introduced, or we may use this Windows Credential Manager, or even we may use the other, the key vault service, others like the Azure's or Google's key maintain services. But for now, we just put this information in service, which is not recommended. But think about this um, uh, alternative to make sure your secure uh, credential is secured. So once you create the, the singleton instance of the cloud healthcare service by populating that code inside Lloyd, the next thing is you need to get the instance using this defined key. So we have the other code in the steps area, as I did here. So we move the creating code in the deploy. So we need to get the instance of Cloud Healthcare Service in here to use right here. So we created that one as a Cloud Healthcare Service variable. So we can use the same thing, the create singleton, and you can use get singleton, the singleton method that requires the genetic type parameter, which is Cloud Healthcare Service. And the second thing is will be created key like this way. Now we are ready to use this singleton instance of the Cloud Healthcare Service inside the steps whenever it was executed. So to make sure this one is created, we can use the other special UI to view whether the HSM message is uploaded or not. But unfortunately, there's no way for now from the Google Cloud Console. So we may have to drive another way whether this HSM message is uploaded to the HSM V2 store correctly. So to make sure that one, you may put extra code inside this steps code. So we can use this one, receive messages, the this one, this one. So this HSM message will be stored in the Google Healthcare AKS storage. And property of the message. The message is this message has the special property from their own. So one is receive the messaging, which is the created message. And you may just this one, that's this one. Just copy and paste to make sure. Simply copy and paste again. So we have the name, which is the identifier of the uploaded HL7 message. You can just yeah. This is you make sure the in there is a special property labels, which is the dictionary, and you can put the dictionary in the results message as well. So we can brief. So, so I trade 30 each element of the dictionary. So we populated the PID in the dictionary. We can put the result messages in the as key because the key is in this case the PID. So this would be PID and get the value of that labels with the key. So in that case, of course, we have to put the certain line now. So in that case, we can capture the return HSM message object and getting the name and message type and send the facility and send time. Probably this might be a row. It's exactly the same time. So you can go to the here and the messages is the probably this is the one. So we can get the older properties, that helpful property that can be used in the filter later, and then put in the current services result message that can be referenced in the other message service. So we can check this one. Okay. So once we have that one, we ready to upload based on the received ORM. The next step is to call that Google ORM uploader from the ORM sender because as you remember, this ORM sender will send received ORM message to the Google ORM uploader. Then this is required to map ORM sender to Google ORM uploader. Like here, associate Google ORM uploader. Because we have to send the message from the ORM sender. So if you look at here, there is a menu that's add service guest code. It will show up available service. And you can click the add button and you will see that the message that you have to pass in the ORM property of the required arguments. So in this case, the HTML message is received and it will be parsed in here. So this HTML message, which is part of this message, has the property named that contains HTML message. So we can assign the received messages, HL7 message in the ORM part. And then this associate with the uh, request run result async, and then we can send the received message and to the Google ORM uploader. And once we call, you can get the response from the request run result async because we assign this services result in specifically result message will contain all the message properties. So this run request result has also run result, and this has this result message as well. So this needs to be assigned to current service, which is so just assign returned result message to current services result message that will be shown in the result list on the management workstation. I will show you what this actually does later. So we are ready to send a message to the Google ORM Sender. But at this time, we are not going to use any other service to send and compose and send to here. Instead, we are going to use the ORM Sender tester. It was supposed to create test the messages and feed that message to the ORM Sender. In our case, I created some lines of code to compose and send to the ORM Sender. I'm not going to dive into each messages, what they are, but the key point for each message is the time of message and probably patient ID as well. So each message has special value for testing, and you can look at these all for date value and patient ID in here that can be used in the later. But for now, we are going to create this sample message and send to the ORM Center. At this point, you may think that the group of references named as a target service, this will point at the testers group because this is the part of the testers, and this group automatically check these parent, which is testers, and it has the target service key and value as this one. So what this key actually means is this is the ORM sender's GUI. So this is stored in here, and the underlying or containing service that use this group will automatically check that value, and then the request async method will automatically check the destination, which is ORM Center. What this actually means is if you look at this similar action that I did before for uh, mapping ORM Center to Google ORM Uploader, you will see that available services. And if I click the ORM Center, it shows like this one. So this is the exactly same format of request async, but at this time, this shows these ORM senders grid. But instead of directly typing the entire grid here, we can just put this group reference. So in case the certain target service that this service ORM sender tester will point at is changed, it will automatically, if I change this one, it will automatically read that reference and send accordingly. So instead of the type providing grid that can be modified next time if the target destination or target service is changed. So you can use group reference instead. So anyway, so will create these 4 sample messages and then send to the ORM sender. And if you go to the here, you will send the created message to here. And the last step to test this one is we still need the destination to send the HL7 message, not just the Google Healthcare API, but also our final destination. So the thing that we check from our client side is they may use this Mirth Connect as a just simple tool to receive and process. So they don't want to store any message or relevant data using their external database or even internal dirty database. So instead, they want to use Merge Connect as a simple middleman that does not store any messages. But they can track of such kind of information, but they don't want to save from the Merge Connect side. So they disable that. And in this configuration, the bottom listener channel in this case will not show any message if certain message is received in here. If you double click this audio listener, this pane will show the list of the messages that Merge Connect, specifically this audio listener channel received. But if we disable that feature as a disabled one, there's no way from Merge Connect side to reprocess the received message, which is the previously received, unless they have extra code to access storage. But if they don't actually store that one, from this end, it will not possible. So think about this situation that we will handle from our end. So we are ready to deploy all these services based on these 3 services. So if I switch to the management station, and there's no currently running instance, and also there's no source on the current sub. So we have to load all the models from domain to service. So you can choose the domain and then you can just double check whether these services are all the select again the domain and let's load them. Okay, load it. And if I switch back to the menu station in the source tab, refresh, and we have that one. So as we don't have any domain here, so we can do the same thing by clicking the domain and then deploy. Okay, we have only one service is running, but the other 2 services under the testers group were not deployed because this is the testers proposed. It shouldn't be deployed. So it should be deployed manually one by one if the service is under the testers. Oh, this is not one. So ORM center first, and then we have a target destination. So we can deploy ORM center in this position. And from the Merge Connect side, it will show the service is connected like this way. So now we're ready to send the HL7 message to the destination as well as the Google Healthcare API, which is not actually available for now using the NAUI. So let's start. The autumn sender tester will create and send the message. I think stop that one. And here they received the 4. But as I said, there's no message history. And if they want to reprocess, there's no way because there's no save the message from their end unless they have another special channel to look at the stories. But they decided to not do that. So from our end, we can check our Google Healthcare API, specifically HL7v2 data store. So let's take a look at what we received from the Google Healthcare API and Earth Connect. So if you look at here, this is the header message that we sent. And in the middle, there is a portion that we intentionally add in the result message. For example, the first line, which is a little long and wrap, is the name of the HL7 message on HL7v2 data store. They store the message with this ID that cannot be changeable. And then this is the type that we define. For example, if we go here, I just rephrased what I did. So I phrased this message type, send the facility, send type. This is also another row, send time, and the name and the labels. So if we come back here, it shows that this ORM, this message type, this is the sending facility, and this is the message processing time, and this is the PID that we populated to the labels. So we now confirm that the message was successfully uploaded, and the message has the special properties of this one in it. And the last part is what we received from the Merge Connect site. And if you look at the other one, it has the same similar thing. So we have 4 messages created and set. So we now ready to check how can we retrieve the message and download. But before that, we can think about how can you maintain that kind of special service. Just put right under the ORM data store or create another place to store that one. Because this is the user interactive one, what that exactly means is we will use special UI, and the special UI has the area to type the conditions to retrieve the HL7 message stored on the HL7v2 data store. So we may need to create another folder named as plugins and put the new service under the plugins folder to make sure the service which is related to the plugin is that service. So you can just simply create the plugin and we can create Google Autumn Search plugin as our service. So we can create this Google Autumn plugin service because we can choose the special type, which is the plugin, which is the new feature of the Maca. And there's only one option, one service under the plugin. So we can choose this one. And I may create a temporary file, what actually user interactive plugin is before we move on. So we may just simply say that if we have SIU message stories, and then we may just name as a something like this one. And we can create this one. And if you go here on the step, we can type this special code by providing something like this. This is the list of the string. Of course, we can put some special value, like PID, for example. This is what other service have to provide when the service call this plugin. And this PID plugin could be available like this one, underscore PID. So if we put something code like this, because we are going to use this one, something like this. If we provide the PID, it will show you this one. So just PID. It's not actually full code, but for testing purpose. Mhm. So we can use this one to show what actually plugin UI is. And if I go to here and I refresh this one, and also I can deploy Europe as well. So we have this running Google SIU mock search plugin. And if you go here in the Autumn Center and you click the request, there's a special button on the right side of the top left right, which is HL7 Cloud Search plugin. It shows Google SIU mock search plugin. So for now, it has only one. And if I click here, it shows what I defined in here. If I put in here one, and it shows like this one. This is kind of user interactive way of uh, retrieving and download the HSM message from HSM v2 data store in the HSM healthcare API. And then if you choose one of the message, and it will populate the message in here. In this case, this is garbage, so we're not going to use this one. But it shows that this is the interactive and pluggable service in the special UI, which is here. And if I undeploy this one, and if I go to the ORM sender, and if I click here, nothing is available. So that is what I just said, plug up. So let's go back to the our main service to implement. This is just what I did. Instead of creating the Google ORM search plugin, we may import that one to save some time, some more time. I put this service in the special location to share later. And the Google ORM search plugin is the one that I'm going to import. Just click. If you remember the previous work that I did in the audit node, I had to put the instantiation code in the deploy area that makes sure the only one instance across the service is available. So the same thing in here as well. So because we could use the get singleton once the other service has, but we don't know whether the instance is created by other services. So this looks redundant, but should be in here as well. Like we have to provide the editor service account in here that we downloaded, providing the Google credential. So if you look at here, most of this code are similar. And in this case, we may need to define different name as an application, but we share the same uh, JSON in the retrieving. But as I mentioned, if you download the other uh, credential, you can use this one, and then you have to create another instance with this one because this is this different part of the argument of the constructor, in this case, cloud healthcare constructor. So you may have to define the other name instead of the shareable cloud healthcare service by using only one editor, HL7 message editor one. In this case, we use the consumer permission. So we may have to define a different key to differentiate with the editor. But we use the same one, so we can keep the same name with this one. And we can make sure that this one, the ORM message is using the same credential, which is the Maka test, this one. And go to the config. We have three arguments. First one PID, and the second one is date from, and the third one is date to. This will be used to retrieve the HSN message stored in the HSN v2 data store. I will show you what this actually works with the code. And if you look into the code, we use the same code, which is the HSN message that we will populate in the later section, like this one. And what we need to do is we have to get the instance, of course, and using that one, we are going to use this special service to interact with the plugin pop-up UI. So we have to also specify the store name where the file located. And we may use the certain way to retrieve the HFM file because that might be huge to retrieve in one queue. So in order to retrieve one time, you may use paging because they provide a paging way. So we have kind of looping through each page. I put the 100, and then we may check whether the date from and date to are given or received. So we will change the receive date from and date to parameters to date from and date to string, because internally Google use their own way of filtering logic. So it requires to convert date time to UTC date time, like this way. So we need to convert given data to date time data to UTC conforming data store by using this string. And then we can use the same way of calling the method. And at this time, we are using this list method. So if you look at here, you may have the method that you can use. In this case, list of the editor is this one. And also you can check the other method in the other location. But for now, we are going to use this list method to filter because this list method has a special way of filtering in their method, which is the filter property of request can be assigned with special values. For example, we assigned the PID in the warren unloader as a key, and the value we assigned with the PID from the received message. So we can define what PID is there by using this kind of way. So if you look at here, the labels are all lowercase, but if you look at in the message, they are all where's the key? They start with the uppercase L. But in this case, we use their standard, which is start from the lowercase, and then the PID, which is what we define in here. And also we can use the key to compare whether the given or test parameter, which is the score PID, is there. And if we have date from, and we can use the send time, which is the equivalent to MSH.7, and we can use that one to compare test parameter, which is in this case data from, which is UTC format string. They have their own internal way to filter, so you can take advantage of that value using the filter property by by assign what we have from our end. So if you look at here, the list method, method has its own way of filtering in here. If you look at here, there is a send time, which is, see that? This is MSH7 field, send time or create time or send facility and patient ID, which is we are not using this for this moment. And here, labels that we used in the key ID section. So by providing that value in the filter property, we can filter from their side, and then you can get out of that one. So this will automatically create the result set. But you may think this field actually is this value is part of their own message object. So once you upload the message, the Google will automatically populate this property based on this received HL7 message. For example, this one send time will be populated with the MSH7, and the send facility will be populated with the MSH4, something like that. They will populate that one and will use and provide this one to filter from their side. So all we can do is just populate the value by composing some of them and then provide in the filter. So that's what we did with PID and date from and date to. So we can just execute that request to the target store, and then we can get the received message, and then we will need to call another method, which is get, because if you try the other application or code editor to run this code, the HSM message, which is returned object, has the message, which is the message, but it only has the name property, which is a little bit unusual value like this. This is the name of the message that can be used as an identifier, but there's no identifiable information related to the HSMV2 message. Like there's no information about the PID, there's no mention about the message type, and so on. So this is used only to identify the location of the HSM message. So again, this is the only value that available in the return HSM messages object. So the other property, which is sometimes separation time and session ID, and the other one are all null. So we have to retrieve again using this name that can be used as identifier or location to get the message, and then we can get the message, and then using that one, we have to convert base64 message to the string format, and then finally we assign that converted string value to HSM message list to store that message in the set list of strings method that will show the list to the pop-up, actually plugin pop-up. So by composing all the filter data, we will get the all the related message, but only location is there. So we have to resend the method to the target location to get the message. So please make sure that this list method is not returning huge data set. Please minimize all the data set because it will round trip one by one. So that will cause some kind of uh, performance issue and some kind of delay. So once you narrow down, and this will get the actual message from the message's name. So by using this uh, paging, you can narrow down page by page. But the initial idea is you can narrow down by using some kind of logic by limiting the date, time, or even patient ID, and then you can just get the data one by one using this way. So by using this one, we can implement the plugin UI by hooking up this plugin. So this, we already have this plugin group, so we can only load this one. Go to the source, refresh, and if I, by the way, we have no plugins there, so you can deploy both plugins and what it will look like from the ORM sender's perspective in the request tab. Go here. We have currently Google ORM search plugin is selected. If you click here, we have two pluggable services. And it shows the corresponding the value in here. So we are on the Google ORM search plugin. As we did before, we have 4 messages. So we can just execute without providing any arguments here. And we have 4 messages retrieved from the HL7V2 data store. So we can pick one of them, or even we can filter by using this PID. But for now, what we are concerning is from their end, there means our client's end, how to resend the HSM message. The first thing is we need to get the HSM message list to reprocess. For example, we have this kind of scenario from Merge Connect side end. First, the client app wants the last week message that failed in their system. What that means is they receive the message, but somehow they may have a system glitches or certain situation is not handled by their side. So they have to change their code, or they may have to maintain by receiving modified value from their end, which means they don't have to change or update their system, which may require some budget or some resources. So they request us to send from our end to find the previously sent message and calculate MSH7 with current week date, whatever date, but in this week. So let's say we have the message wasn't processed in the before May 31st, which is 2 weeks ago. But let's say just we have that date. So the date is 25 May 31st. So even if this one was 2 weeks ago, we'll just say that this one is last week. So we retrieved two messages that can process in May 29th and May 30th. This is May 30th and this is May 29th. So we can uh, pick one message to the main UI, but cannot uh, choose both of them in the main UI. So only one message. So let's check this one first. Oh, by the way, we already know that there are four messages. So just click this one and add one, and this will be populated in the main UI's HL7 message pane. So what they request was to change the message to the current date message. For example, let's say just we today has the June 12. So instead of May 29, we can put this one as June 12. We can send just as is, but they will not process because their system is only processed this week. So we have to modify this one because we send a custom message, which is not directly through any application. So just change this one to June 12, which is today, and then let's click the process. And if you go here and retrieve, we have 5 records. And of course, the Merge Connect site, they will have 5, but still they don't have any record because it's there by design. And we have this new record and have the current date, and they send the ACK message. And of course, we put the certain capturing data in here. So we have this name and the ORM, which is the message type and sending facility value, and the message processing date and PID, which is what we picked. So we have currently 5 messages processed by using this request UI. But if you remember what we did before, if you are not providing anything, it will grab entire message from the HL7B2 data store. So if you click the execute, at this time, it will get 5 records because we just sent with the updated value for patient ID P0001, which is the last one, which is the June 12th, which is today. So this is just what I did. So what I did so far was how to resend the previously sent message using Google Healthcare API, specifically HL7B2 data store that we created using the Google console in here. Using all the information in here, we created all the required services in here using this plugin service. By using this way, we can resend back to our initial question. We can resend all the previously sent message, even retrieving and pick one of them that cannot be processed previously. And we can successfully resend the message to our client's app using new feature, which is the plugin associated with the HL7 cloud search type service. So we went through the Google Healthcare today, and I also showed how Waka can interact with AWS S3 simple storage service and Azure's blob storage service. So by using these three cloud storage service, you can freely work with Maka by retrieving and creating HTML message from their end. So this is all the tutorial for new feature of Maka. So please play with this one if you like, and don't forget this one is new feature. If you previously downloaded before this one, I recommend to download the Macadamia and Macaron. And if you have any question while you're playing with this application, and this is still prototype, you may face a lot of kind of error message or bugs. So in that case, also uh, send me an email. I will follow up with the update or fix or patch. So thank you for watching this video. I really uh, appreciate you watch this video. So thank you and bye-bye.